Hey guys, I want to welcome you to the show. This is episode 2 of Crime Talk Radio, and we are so excited to get the chance to talk with you today. I am your host, JD, and I want to start off by saying thank you to everyone who listened to our first episode. We had over 100 downloads in the first 24 hours. Guys, that is unbelievable. That put Crime Talk Radio among the top 25% of all new podcasts for their first 7 days of running of the first episode. And we've gotten way more than that since then. Enough to put us in the top 10% for that same 7-day period now. That is so incredible. We are so blown away. And we want to say thank you for each one of those listens, each one of those downloads, those shares, helping us get Deborah Manning's story out there. It's been amazing, right? And we're so grateful for your help with that. Danielle, it's been wild, right? I mean, tell me how you're feeling. Episode 2, here we are. What's on your mind?
Honestly, I'm blown away. I was not expecting the response. I know this is something that we feel really passionate about. We want to share the stories. We want to get the information out there. But I was not expecting so many people to be so eager to join us on the journey of these stories.
To be so eager to jump in and download. It was so crazy when we hit 100, then we hit 200, then now we hit 300. It's like, whoa, it's nothing. We're not crime junkies. Can I say their name? Are we allowed to say their name? Can they say
I don't know. It might be copyrighted.
Can we afford to say their name?
Probably
I don't
not.
know. But we're not CJ. We're not CJs.
You're right.
Okay, but we trying. I'm just saying, we're not there yet, but 300 plus downloads for the very first episode. We're an unknown podcast. Guys, right now we've got like 700 Insta followers. We've got 500 almost on Facebook. And we just launched our first episode. It's crazy. And that's you guys. That's all for Deborah. That's all for Bonnie. That's all for every episode that we're going to cover. Those people, those stories, it's for them. So I'm right there with you. I'm blown away. I did not expect, I expected people to listen to it, but man.
And I'm just so appreciative. And I hope that the families see this as support as well. That there are people who are still interested in the story. They still want to know what happened. They still want justice.
Yeah. People are still talking about justice for Deborah. We've had so many people reach out now that we didn't feel would talk to us before that are calling us with information. It's nuts. The last week has been crazy. The amount of people reaching out to us directly involved in her case. And so take away just hey, that's really cool that so many people listen to our episode. What's happening with the case, the movement that it's causing, it's nuts. I was thinking 6 months, 9 months, a year down the road, we'll do an update episode. Bro, it's going to happen a lot faster than that. I'm not going to have a choice. Like, this is happening quick. So, yeah, man. And here we are, episode 2 now. So it's been wild. It's been crazy. It's been a lot of fun. It's like, now once it started, it's never going to stop. We kept getting congratulations from people like, hey, you made it. You finally made it. And I'm like, what? No.
This is like the first day of school.
Launch day was us jumping off the cliff.
Yeah.
Like the fall just started. We didn't make any. It's really cool. I'm excited.
Now we're parasailing and we don't know where it's going to end. It just doesn't stop
every other week now, no matter what. Yeah. No, we're excited. Episode 2, here we are. Before we get too far into it, a little bit about our show. We are Crime Talk Radio. We are a bi-weekly true crime podcast bringing you coverage of unsolved cases from around the world. Danielle and I attempt to investigate the leads, track down the evidence, and search for the truth. Our only goal is to be a voice for those whose voice has been taken and to make sure that people hear their stories. So we will continue to talk until all of their stories are told. Our episodes may contain graphic content about cases that may be hard to listen to for some individuals, so listener discretion is advised.
Now, none of this is possible without you, our listeners, and JD and I always want to invite you to join us on Facebook. Give us a like, give us a share. On Instagram, Crime Talk Radio Pod. Also our Buzzsprout. We're on Spotify, Amazon Music. None of this is possible without you. Give us a like, give us a share. Help us get these stories out there. JD, take us through today's case.
All right. Well, if you're ready, Danielle, let's share today's story. The story that you're about to hear is quite possibly the oldest unsolved murder case still on the books in the entire state of Missouri. Since July of 1954, residents of the small southeast Missouri town of Delta, Missouri, have been whispering amongst themselves and asking the same question: who killed Bonnie Huffman? Bonnie was a school teacher who didn't seem to have an enemy in the world, a young woman who had her whole life ahead of her. a woman who left to go see a movie and never came home. This is the story of a case with very little evidence, very few witnesses, and locals believe very little hope of ever being solved. This is the story of the murder of Bonnie Huffman.
We will continue to keep you informed as this story unfolds.
Bonnie Loretta Huffman was born on November 19, 1933, in Whitewater, Missouri, to parents Otto and Lily Bernice Bullinger Huffman. Bonnie was always seen as exceptionally smart and even graduated high school as valedictorian of her class. She then attends the Missouri State Teachers College. While it is noted that she did receive a scholarship, Bonnie is paying for her way through school by working shifts at a Woolworth store. After graduation, she takes a job with the Buckeye School in Old Appleton, Missouri, teaching grades K through 8th in one room. Bonnie is living with her mother and half-brother Bobby Thiele in a small home with no electricity. Using money she made from teaching, Bonnie has recently had electricity installed in the home and has just finished her 3rd term teaching. Bonnie is dating a young man named Doug Hyatt, who has just returned from serving in the military in Korea. While not officially engaged, Bonnie is very much in love, and there is an understanding that they are to be married. Making the decision that more money would help her start the life that she'd love to have, Bonnie decides to leave teaching and accept a job with the Missouri Utilities Company, which will offer her a substantially larger pay than her career in teaching. Our story starts on Friday, July 2nd, 1954. At 20 years old, Bonnie stands 5 feet 10 inches tall and weighs 133 pounds. She has brown hair that she often wears short, and she has dark brown eyes. It's early afternoon, and Bonnie is leaving her home to go meet her friends in Cape Girardeau to see a movie. She stops at Delta, Missouri, at a service station to buy a tire. While there, she calls her best friend, Mary Lou Bess, to discuss their plans for the evening. Bonnie and Mary Lou had become close friends when Bonnie taught Bess's younger brother in school. Bonnie is excited to see her friend today, as the last 24 hours have been incredibly tough for her. Her boyfriend, Doug Hyatt, had broken off their engagement the very day before. This has come as a huge shock to Bonnie, and she is excited for the chance to be with friends and to try to just relax and have fun. Bonnie has told her mother that she may stay with family in Cape, and not to worry if she doesn't come home. When her car is ready, Bonnie tells her friend that she is leaving the station and that she'll see them soon. Her 1938 Ford only went about 35 miles per hour total, so the drive to Cape Girardeau takes her a good little bit. Bonnie meets her friends at the Broadway Theater, and they spend several hours enjoying the picture show. While I haven't been able to verify exactly what movie they watched that night, we do know that actors like Paul Newman and Jack Lemmon were the big actors of the day, and it's likely that they watched something involving one of these big names of the age. It's important to note that times were very different in 1954. People left their doors unlocked. People trusted each other. Windows were left open to let cool night air in, as most people did not have air conditioners yet. It was an innocent time in this part of southeast Missouri, and for people in the local community, what happens to Bonnie in the next few hours will strip away that innocence and leave locals in a state of fear and panic. As Bonnie, her friend Mary Lou, and husband Kramer Lou leave the theater, everyone decides that they are not ready to head home just yet, and they make their way towards a local drive-in called Wimpy's. As they eat, the topic of the breakup with Doug comes up several times. Bonnie is obviously very upset, and her friends are happy she is with them to keep her company. After finishing eating, The group decides to go to Cape Rock to watch the barges as they float by. Cape Rock is a popular hangout spot for teenagers today, just as it was even in 1954. The group stayed there as long as an hour or so, but probably not much longer. At this point, they decide to leave, and Bonnie asks if they could drive by one of the taverns downtown to look at the cars parked outside. This was an odd request, and the Besses assumed that she wanted to see if Doug was at this particular bar. The group does end up driving by the tavern, but as the place was well known at the time for being kind of a rough joint, Kramer tells them that they cannot go inside. They end up taking Bonnie back to her car, where they drop her off safely. Bonnie also tells the Besses that she is probably staying with relatives in town, so they wish her well and begin heading separate ways. Bonnie, however, does not end up staying the night at her cousin's. She does not go home with the Besses. She does not end up going home. While it's not known exactly what took place over the next several hours, what is known is that this is the last time the Besses will ever see Bonnie alive again. Around 8:30 a.m. on Saturday morning, Bonnie's half-brother Bobby Thiele is walking into Delta with friends. At this point, the day seems just like any normal day. But as they walk around the corner on Route N as it is about to curve into Delta, they see a car parked in the middle of the road. Even from a distance, it is clear that the car they are seeing is Bonnie's. Bonnie had told the family that she may be staying in Cape, so no one at home had expected her the night before, so this was a strange sight to see. But her car had just had an overhaul done weeks before, so their first thought was that she had decided to come home and the old car had just broken down again. Approaching the car, they realize things look very odd. The driver's door is wide open and the running lights are still on. Bonnie's earrings are laying on the road. A cap gun is laying on the road, and it must be noted that cap guns of the day did not have an orange cap. They were made of real metal and looked very closely like a real firearm. The key to Bonnie's car was still in the ignition, and when Bobby turned the key, the car started immediately. Bobby moved the car over to the side of the road, and they made their way to Delta to use the phone. They made several phone calls to family and to the Besses, checking to see if anyone has seen Bonnie. After confirming that she is not with anyone that Bobby calls, he heads home to tell his mother what he has found. She then takes the two back to Delta to call the police department in Cape Girardeau. The police department, led by Police Chief Percy Little, meet with the family at the car to take the family's report. Instructing the family to drive the car home, they take their report and head back to Cape to file it. At first, no huge red flags are raised for officers. Crimes like kidnapping are practically unheard of in Southeast Missouri in 1954. Surely she must be with a family member or a friend. But as the day wears on, and they contact all of the known people in Bonnie's life, it becomes apparent that something isn't right. She's not just with a friend. Bonnie Huffman is missing. And by late afternoon and into the evening, panic begins to set in. For the police and for the citizens in the local community. And the searches begin immediately. Over the next 2 days, many searches take place. All over several different counties. People from all over come together to search fields near where her car was found. Fields where rumors led them to. Cabins in the woods, everywhere. Everyone is looking for the school teacher that is missing. But on Monday, July 5th, just 59 hours after her car was found, the unthinkable happens. A couple, Earl Akins and his wife, are on their way home to Allenville, and as they are driving down the road, they notice a funny smell. They turn around and stop on the side of the road, headed back towards Delta to investigate. Earl walks towards the edge of the road and notices that as he approaches, the smell has become stronger. Looking out, he sees a culvert that is surrounded by tall weeds. Laying just feet from the culvert, feet from one of the main roads headed into Delta, is the body of Bonnie Huffman. Now, the fear that spread throughout the local community was immediate. There was not just a missing girl anymore. There was a murdered girl, and everyone was scared. The police investigate every possible lead there is. One partial fingerprint is found inside Bonnie's car, but there is no one that the police can match it to. A VFW magazine listed to a man from St. Louis is found in the ditch where Bonnie's body is found. This man is tracked down and questioned. It is found that he was in the area actually with his nephew, who later commits a sexual assault in Bollinger County. But the man says he has no good reason as to why his magazine would be found in Delta, and he passes a polygraph and is let go. Lie detector tests are issued to more than 100 people in the days and weeks that follow her murder. Many people are questioned, but all are let go. The sad fact of Bonnie's story is that it didn't take decades to become a cold case. It became a cold case in a matter of weeks. An autopsy is performed, and it is noted that Bonnie's neck is broken at the third cervical vertebrae and her jaw is dislocated. Her checkered shirt was torn, and her underwear, purse, white beaded necklace, watch, and shell-rimmed glasses were never located. The sweltering July heat had badly decomposed the body. Though sexual assault is suspected, the autopsy results were inconclusive due to the level of decomposition. 2 new witnesses are located who claim to have seen Bonnie driving along Highway 25 at about 30 miles per hour. Robbie Poinsett and his wife say that they saw Bonnie traveling towards Delta, and that shortly after her, a car flew down the same road, headed in the same direction, driving very fast and honking their horn and flashing their lights. Shortly later, this same car then headed back out of Delta up Highway 25. An hour and a half later, a woman drives down Route N and sees Bonnie's car abandoned and no one around. But neither of these statements bring police any closer to solving her case. And for the next 67 years, that same story will repeat itself over and over again. Never a main suspect, just a new and random lead to follow. Weeks after her murder, the man supposedly seen chasing Bonnie's car down Highway N that night is arrested in neighboring Scott County. The man gives a partial confession and is arrested for her murder, but the charges are later dropped. The man arrested, Roy Wilson Jr., was examined by a psychiatrist, and it was determined that Wilson was unlikely to be of sound state of mind to make such a confession, and that the confession itself had been forced, and the man is let go. Many locals believed at the time that the arrest itself was a political move on the part of the Scott County Sheriff's Department in an attempt to garner attention. But the case, again, quickly goes cold. A year after her murder, a memorial cross is placed by a stranger in the spot where Bonnie was found. To this day, it will remain a mystery to most as to where the cross actually came from. In the 1960s, a true crime magazine printed Bonnie's story and once again brought it into the light. Many new leads came out. Again, nothing of substance. In 1974, evidence in Bonnie's case is destroyed by the police department, as at the time, no one could imagine that those articles of clothing and other pieces of evidence could later contain DNA and be of use. The 80s and the 90s are much the same in Bonnie's case. New leads here and new leads there. New anniversary newspaper articles every so often. In 2004, an anonymous witness sends a letter to the Cape Girardeau Police Department detailing actually being a partial witness to what took place to Bonnie that night. Police said the kind of information given in the letter could only have come from an actual witness. The letter writer claimed to be coming home from a dance and came upon a car parked in the road. Getting out to see if anyone needed help, the writer claimed to have encountered 2 men down in a ditch. When the 2 men saw the writer, they approached and tried to pull the person from his or her car. The letter writer managed to get away, but there was someone in the ditch screaming also. Police later stated that the location that the letter writer gave of the car is the same location where Huffman's body was found. The writer, however, has never came forward and has never been identified. Shortly after the letter, a man from St. Louis reports to the Cape Girardeau Sheriff's Department that he thinks his father committed the murder. The man's parents were from Allenville. When he was 7 years old, he claimed he overheard his father and another man talking, and the other man saying to his father, "I think we should have shoved her up in the culvert further." However, there is no physical evidence to back up this man's claim, and both suspects are deceased. A woman from Texas contacts police and says that she'd become aware that one of her late relatives, before his death in 1998, had confessed to a rape and murder of a young woman near Delta, Missouri in the 50s. But once again, it goes nowhere. There is no physical evidence to back up this claim. Every time the case resurfaces in the media, it seems like the same cycle starts to repeat itself. A few tips come in, police drop everything to check them out, and they always find themselves at a dead end. In 2011, relatives of Bonnie Huffman purchased a set of black onyx benches that have her photograph engraved on them. They are located in Bollinger County Memorial Park Cemetery in Marble Hill, Missouri, where she is buried. To this day, the small town of Delta, Missouri remembers the name Bonnie Huffman. As you walk by the post office and pass by the gas station at the corner of EE and 25 in Delta, you can still feel the presence of the young school teacher who was taken from us all those years ago. Her case may have never been solved, but her memory and her story and her life will never fade from the memories of those who live in Southeast Missouri. For us, we will always remember Bonnie Huffman. All right, guys, this is the talk portion of Crime Talk Radio. Danielle, I'm going to give my first thoughts on the story. One of the big theories that a lot of people have put out would be a stranger from out of town passing through. The idea is somebody passes through, they don't know them. Bonnie, it's a crime of opportunity. This person does it for whatever reason and drives away and drives off, and we never see them again. And so that is one of the reasons that a lot of people think this case may have gone unsolved for so terribly long, is that no matter how many people they've interviewed, no matter how many lie detector tests they've given, all these different witnesses, all these different suspects over the years, all these different people, all these years, and they've never found the guy. They've never found the people that did it. Maybe it's because it's a stranger from out of town. What do you think?
I don't think there's any way it could be someone from out of town, because if you look at the information for the body placement, where it was found, I've said this before, but location I think is always important to an extent. If her body was in a location where so many people would have walked by, so many locals would have passed this location after the time of her death, looking at the decomposition, the coroner said, between 52 and 72 hours?
Roughly, yeah.
From where they found her. So if it was such a high traffic area that they didn't find her body very quickly after she went missing, if an out-of-towner had come and committed this crime, when would they have had the opportunity to place the body back? I'm under the impression that she wasn't found initially because the body was placed there after.
It's one of the thoughts that people think. Yeah, it's give or take, because some people think that her body was there the whole time. the decomposition would kind of back that up. But there are a lot of people who think that she was there was rumors at the time that she was either held for a couple days still alive, or that even if she died, she was tossed there and placed there very recently before she was found, and not at the very beginning, that she wasn't there the whole time. There were a lot of people at the time interviewed who said, we walked right by that spot. We literally, hundreds of people would have gone by that spot. No one ever noticed anything. Not a smell. I mean, nobody saw her until 59 hours later. So I do find it hard to be that it would be a person from out of town, from my way of thinking too, because I've been to Delta. My dad's house, well, you've seen it, from where Deborah was found, her body.
Right.
It's right outside of Delta. So I know the Delta area. It's small. It's so small. So how, in my head, I'm like, how does a stranger in 1954 just be passing through Delta to get there? I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just the odds of it are so slim. It's a very small area. But it wasn't as small back then, actually. It was bigger then than it was now. And there was a hotel at Blomeyer Junction there in the 1950s. It closed in like 1956, like 2 or 3 years later. But there was a hotel. And honestly, you don't put a hotel in a spot that there's no out-of-towners. In the middle of the boonies, if there's a hotel there, somebody's staying there, not just locals. I'm sure some husbands were caught there at that spot by wives at one point or another. But, there can't be that many locals that are staying at this hotel. So I was kind of blown by that, because I'm like, okay, there's a hotel there. And then one of the theories we talked about in the story, the VFW magazine guy, he's a stranger from out of town. What is his magazine doing being found right there by her body, where her body's found, or right there with the car? I can't remember, whichever one. But what's it doing there? This guy's from St. Louis or whatever. He's there with his nephew. They can't explain why his magazine, it was a recent edition too. It's not like it was 6 months old. It got passed to friends and it ended up there somehow. It's a recent edition. So he can't explain why it was at the location. He just says, well, I don't know. We were over in Bolinger County. Sometime later down the road, the nephew who was with him commits a sexual assault of some type, and it says rape in the paper, literally after Bonnie. So it's like, I don't love the idea that it was a local, and I never liked it when I was younger hearing about this case. I was like, had to be a local. But there's a motel there, this VFW guy, the VFW magazine guy, the detective who looked at this case for basically the last 20 years for that point, that's the one he said he really thought we should have pushed harder on. Apparently they tracked the uncle down and polygraph tested him, and he passed. What's the reliability for polygraph, Danny? Do we trust them?
I mean, I don't think polygraphs are reliable, because you can trick a polygraph. It's your body response to certain stressors. If you can control your body and you can stay calm, you can pass a polygraph, even if you're super guilty. Doesn't mean that you won't pass. I just don't think they're super reliable. That's my personal opinion.
That was so well put together and articulated. I was trying to make a joke, and you came in with this beautiful response.
Because I really feel that way.
No, I know. I was like, I was like, do we trust polygraphs? And no. I really thought you were gonna. I expected no, we don't. And you took off. We're gonna keep all of that. That's all staying here. No, we don't. We don't trust polygraphs. So the uncle passed the polygraph. The detective at the time said he said, I wish they would have looked at this harder back then, the uncle and the nephew. What's the magazine doing there, man? There's only like 1 or 2 small scenarios that it's there and it's an innocent explanation. Very slim.
I don't know though, because if you're looking at a piece of paper, I mean, a magazine is not like a highly personal item. It's a book. It's a newspaper. It's not a highly personal item. So if we're at the gas station, okay, and I set my magazine down on the gas pump while I get my gas, you pull up next behind me and you're like, I wanted to read that. You pick it up, you throw it in your truck. Then you go to lunch and you leave it there because you're like, well, it's not mine. I don't like it. I'm going to leave it here on the table. It's easy for something to get passed quickly and go far. Look at like Flat Stanley, something like that. There's all kinds of experiments of like how far something will travel. Just because it has his name on it doesn't mean he put it there.
It's also the kind of thing that's really easy to get kicked out of the floorboard of your car as you're trying to bring a girl into the car.
I'm not saying that he wasn't present, but if he did pass the polygraph, which I do believe it is hard to trick a polygraph. It's not impossible, but I would think it is difficult. but just because it has his name on it doesn't place him there.
Well, the polygraph, no, you're right. The polygraph thing too, man, is important because when we talk about a polygraph today, we have to understand that even today they're not reliable. But at least now today we have the research. We know the right questions to ask. Did they even give proper polygraph exams back then in the 50s? Did they do the process properly? Were there variable questions? And I'm not judging, I'm not saying that, it's lack of training. I'm not saying anybody did anything on purpose, but the VFW magazine guy, it doesn't mean he was there just because the magazine's there. I don't love the magazine being there, but at the time, I feel like just because the file was her case file, basically all the evidence was destroyed in 1975.
Right.
I feel like if we had the evidence from the case file and we had original officer notes, there would be a better explanation for VFW magazine guy. I think that they probably did investigate him harder than we think. I feel like there had to be. You can't tell me that as an investigator of any type, even if you're like Professor Magoo, I don't even know. You're like the goofiest detective ever. If you hear that this magazine's found and then 6 months later you find out the nephew who was also with the magazine guy was convicted of rape and assault in that town and you didn't try to investigate that, you know what I mean? I feel like we just don't know because the file might not say it because all we have left is a few pictures and some old faded notes and some polygraph results. That's it. We don't necessarily know what evidence they had prior to 1975 or the 70s, whenever it was. So I don't love VFW magazine guy for that simple fact that I mean, it's sketchy. Of course it sounds, and I could tell you for 2 hours, I could build a whole story around why I think it was him. I just think there's other scenarios where they fit too, man. We're talking about strangers. That Texas, there was a deathbed confession from Texas. This guy confessed to his family that in the early 50s he raped and murdered a girl outside of Delta and ditched her in a culvert. Okay. And here's the thing with me on that one. I have a thing for deathbed confessions. You can make up a lot of stuff when you're alive, but to admit to something when you're about to meet judgment, that's like, and I know there's some sick people out there that would do some weird stuff. I get it, but man, that's tough. When I feel like a deathbed confession is as close as you can get to proof, almost in some situations. But how do you prove that he's telling the truth in any way? So him saying it is big. The deathbed from Texas has always gotten me about this case, but there's no way to back it up. I have looked. The cops who investigated it in the 2000s said they couldn't link it to anything other than because to my knowledge, I don't think he said he murdered Bonnie. It was a girl of that at that time period, and he was a stranger passing through. So the assumption would be maybe it was different than Bonnie. Maybe this guy did kill a girl, but it was somebody other than Bonnie. People have looked. The cops then looked. I looked. There's nobody else that was found at that time period that matches it.
Well, maybe they didn't find her. But also, if you're a stranger, you wouldn't have known her name.
Yeah, right. No, that's my point.
He couldn't have confessed with a name.
Yeah, right. No, you're right. But it's another part of that story that it's like, I love that story. To me, that's like, wow. You're telling me that your dad, or that you're telling me that your relative confessed to killing a girl in the early 50s. We have a girl who was found raped and murdered in the early 50s. To me, that's almost one of those things you almost want to write a book and say I solved it. But
how often though are there false confessions? That happens. That happens super frequently.
Does the deathbed part is what? But still, you're right.
It is weird though for it to be like a deathbed confession. You're about to leave your family, and now you're leaving them with this tainted view of you because now they believe you're a murderer.
I think you would do that and not be telling the truth.
I don't know. I mean, it's possible because we don't know his mental state. We don't know his mental.
No, we don't. We don't know anything about this guy.
At that time. It really could be that he maybe, I don't know, felt guilty about something else. And he's like, I'll just say something false. Like, I'll say something that couldn't be true, but will maybe equal out my karma for the other bad thing that I did.
You know what's crazy? A killer, I don't remember who it was. A serial killer one time admitted to a crime that was later proven that he didn't do it. He had killed this girl. And DNA proved him innocent later. And they asked him, like, what the? Like, dude, you were going to go to, like, get the death penalty for a girl you didn't murder. And he was like, I knew I'd never get out of prison, and I just thought that family really deserved closure. And he legit, and I know that sounds crazy that a killer would be showing compassion, but that legit was his response. He said, you know what, I really made some bad mistakes in my life, and I thought I actually have the chance to help someone here. And he said, was it wrong? Did I mislead people and lie to people? Yes. Once again, I messed up, and that's been the story of my life. I'm in prison and I'm a killer. But he actually was trying to do something decent. Is weird. So I'm not saying that's a likely scenario, but there are times like that where it could be possible that somebody would make a deathbed confession and not be accurate, you know?
That's true. Maybe looking at it from that angle, he felt like he would do the family a favor if he took the blame. Because we also don't know if he was connected to the family or friends of hers. Is this just something he felt really compassionate about? He didn't want to name her, but he
Old
felt
cold case
connected.
he heard about. Yeah.
You never know.
No, you just have no idea. Yeah. Yeah. Old cold case he heard about. Who knows, man? Yeah. You know, and once again, this is the strangers. Now, another stranger scenario. The kid from St. Louis who was a little kid who overheard his dad. Okay. So that's stranger. Now, I think they were somewhat local at the time. I think that they were from Allenville, I believe, which would have been pretty local there. But they moved away. And I'm not sure exactly how this plays out, but the kid says they pull over and the dad overhears the dad says to the friend in the car, you know, we should have shoved her further up in the culvert. The cops, from my understanding, really, really dug into that one, and really thought at the time it might have a lot of promise. Once again, this is during that early 2000s period where there was a lot of things that looked like it could have had promise. It's so far away now. You can't prove anything. There's the evidence was destroyed. There's no DNA, no genealogical new stuff is going to come around. There's no science that I think is going to come around that's going to solve this case. There's nothing left. And so that early 2000s period, you had a lot of stuff coming out that were rumors, that were big leads that looked a promise, but all of them fizzle out because it's physically impossible to prove any of it. Okay, so you overheard your dad say something and you're 100% sure that it was Bonnie that he's talking about. That's great, but we have 3 other stories from strangers all saying pretty much that they know who did it, all saying, and so it's like, how do you even begin to put that together and try to put weight behind any of them singularly without more? You can't prove it. The watch, she had her watch, that has a serial number. If you found that watch in your great uncle's jewelry box, it could be tracked. The numbers, we have them. The family gave them to police officers back then. That is one thing that survived in the evidence file. They have the numbers. We could track that. So there are ways it could be solved, but it wouldn't be through witness. These people coming forward saying, and by all means, if you have information, please come forward. Don't take it that way. But these people that have come forward so far, and even none of it can we prove unless the bars. I don't. There's no science. There's no DNA. All these stranger theories sound good. Every single one of those I could buy into, except for the fact that we get to the point of proving it,
and then it's gone.
There's nothing.
I think it's crazy too that we have, I mean, the watch, like, it's not really highly discussed. It's not something that comes up over and over and over again when we're looking at this. But why would you take the watch off of her wrist and not keep it?
They left her high school ring on too. Her evidence was destroyed in 75, I believe, the 70s. And I believe it was actually like they were building a new building, they were moving, and I get it. A lot of people are going to ask that. What, they destroyed evidence? This was before DNA, this was before anything, and it was already a 20-something-year-old cold case. So at this time, they're prioritizing what evidence are we keeping what. As much as I hate it, and I hate to defend destroying evidence, in the 74, 73, 70, or 75, whatever, it's really not that uncommon. And even up into the 80s, for people to destroy evidence from cases because they just didn't know that later. If we had Bonnie's clothes today, I actually think we would end up solving this case. That's the tragedy of Bonnie Huffman's case. The tragedy of Bonnie Loretta Huffman's case is that it could have been a solvable case if a few things had only happened a short bit different over 70 plus years or whatever. If a few things had been handled different, we could have solved this case. That's why I don't know. A lot of locals believe this case will never be solved. And they say it could have never been solved from the very get-go because of these things like this. Every time you turn around, something pops up and goes, nope, sorry, it can't be solved. And so I don't really know, man. I don't know that anything other than the watch with the code or evidence like that coming forward could solve it. But with stranger from out of town in any way, I don't know that there's a way to prove it. Like I said, unless a person were to come forward, a witness with evidence that only the killer would know. But here's the problem with the original case file, with what's left. Is there enough information that's only known by the police that could corroborate and go, oh, wow, only the killer would have known that it was this type of duct tape? Or that? There's none of that. There's nothing in this. I don't know of anything in this case. There were no tools at the scene found to indicate a type of ligature, anything left behind that you could. I mean, there's nothing like that. It's not. And the case file, like I said, there's nothing left. It's polygraph results and pictures and junk. That's it. So, they did a lot, like I said, in the early 2000s to put a lot together. It's like they almost started over in a lot of ways, and they did a fantastic, unbelievable job. Some of the things that we know that we're not even going to talk about because they aren't public knowledge. There are things that are not really publicly knowledge about this case that law enforcement knows. I just don't know if it's enough to conclusively close it, because guess what? I know it too, guys. Like, it's not that hard to get. If you know the right people, like I said, I talk to the family. I just ask questions, knock, Facebook, add a friend. Like, I talk a lot. That's what we do. We're Crime Talk Radio. So it's not impossible to get, but it's not public knowledge, a lot of this stuff. So there are things that people don't know a lot of. Her autopsy report is public in this case. The last case we covered, that was closed. We didn't know for sure. In this case, the heat, the level of decomposition, we don't know for sure if she was raped. Again, in this case, we just don't know for sure. In the last case, it was because we didn't know the report. It wasn't released. This case, it was released a long time ago. And we can actually go read it online. Her death certificate, all that stuff's been released. The level of decomposition, we don't know. That does try play into stranger, though, because there was the theories that people held her in a cabin. Yeah. The autopsy says, the window says 50 to 70 hours-ish. The level of decomp states that she probably died if it was a stranger and did it and left town. VFW magazine guy left like the next day. It said abruptly, actually, the day that, So it could play into stranger based on level of decomp. But you mentioned location earlier. That's a big one. Honestly, where she's headed or where her body's at, it's not really in a prime location like you're headed out of town. You're not trying to hide it like it's almost like you put it there because you wanted it to be found. Almost. I mean, honestly, if you know the area at all and you're driving and you're like, oh my God, even in a panic, I'm going to hide a body. Where am I going to, oh my God, I'm going to hide a body.
In the river. In the river. We live so close to the river.
Why does it always come back to the river? I know.
It's right there.
It's always the river, but we can't. It's right there.
If you are leaving town, don't take, you don't leave it where it's going to be found. That's something that I think is always crazy to me. If you're going to move the body anyway, if something is happening, why is it always tucked somewhere instead of...
Even Clay Waller half used the river. He crossed the river and still went to a land and to a body and buried it. So he's still, I was like, there was the river, and then
it's right
went back to land. Yeah, no, I get it. Nobody ever thinks to use the river, but that's the point. There's a lot of better places if you're really, even in a panic, okay, the river from Delta, it's a little bit further of a drive. I get it, whatever. But I don't see how you get her in that spot. And in a panic, you think right there in that covert's and how would you even know that covert's there? If you're driving by in the middle of the night, you're not going to see it really. Your headlights might notice it, but just, damn, what a coincidence,
It's also weird to think about just in the 50s. If you're from out of town, you've committed a crime, and now you have a body. To me, if you are from the St. Louis area, like the VFW guy was, right? He was from the St. Louis area.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, so you take her with you. If you don't have driver's license or something like that, go into the big city. Nobody's going to know who she is. No one's going to know who she is. They're not going to be able to identify her by fingerprints and things like that. There's not a giant database that's going to tell us who she is right away. It would take so much longer for them to even identify her if she's not local to her area.
Yeah, and in that scenario, you're going to do one of two things. One of them is what you're saying. You're going to take her on your path. You're going to take her where you feel comfortable. Or you're going to want to leave her where you got her, but where she can't be found. That didn't take place here either. She's right there in a covert, 13 foot from the road. It's right there. I don't think it's 13 foot. It's like 3 feet. Like, she's not hidden at all.
Right.
That's why there were so many people who were flabbergasted that people said she was there the whole time. Search parties from the local community, because this isn't like EquiSearch. These guys we have now, all these people, it wasn't that back in the 50s. It was literally citizens, the community, Delta, Missouri, the people in the surrounding area came together, and so many of them said, we walked by this spot. Wasn't there. So it was really easy for people to buy into the fact. But that's my point. Whoever did this was a stranger. They didn't take her and make her disappear and go somewhere else. They didn't make her disappear there. And so it's hard for me to think, because I can't see a stranger knowing that spot, putting her there in a panic and thinking that's a good idea. In a panic that's not, you know what I mean? You're going to go those two routes. You're going to go out in the woods, far out, a spot you don't know, out in the middle of a field, out not 3 feet from the road, half in a culvert.
That's true.
It's just not, you're just not going to do it. You're going to take her straight up the interstate, man. If you're from St. Louis if you're from St. Louis, let's say your nephew, VFW nephew guy, let's say he is cool, but his nephew is nuts, and his nephew snaps. VFW magazine guy pulls up, or somehow is like, oh man, oh, you did it again. So he's just trying to cover it up.
That was so Norman Bates.
I know.
That was so Norman Bates.
I know.
Oh my God, you snapped. Okay.
And I want to keep it too. I kind of like it. We'll see how it sounds, but
well, that to me that doesn't even make sense, Justin. Because how would he accidentally come upon his nephew?
No, that wasn't where I was going with it. No, that's not where I was going with it too. I know that because when I was going at the end there, but I'm saying like, okay, so what if the uncle is with the nephew? They think they're gonna go out and just rape a girl or something, or maybe they're not trying to kill anybody, but they do accidentally kill her.
Terrible uncle.
Terrible uncle, yes, very bad uncle, bad family. But I'm just saying, I'm not dumping her in a culvert. I'm taking her up the interstate, especially if I'm innocent and I'm freaking out. Like, okay, he goes and does this, and then, oh my God, what do we do? What do we do? I'm not gonna leave her body where it can be found right there. I'm freaking out, man. I'm taking her and I'm gonna dump her in the river. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna do it that way. So yeah, it's crazy to me. Parts of it fit, parts of it don't. But the other side of that, we've covered strangers for a bit. That's a pretty big. We covered like 5 theories in
Stranger. Let me ask you this, because if I look at the crime scene and we didn't find rope, we didn't find duct tape. It doesn't look like she was held or captive anywhere, but there is the gun. There's the toy gun. So looking at it, it feels premeditated. Like they flagged her down on the side of the road. Hey, we need help, and then they hold her at gunpoint. But at the same time, it feels so spontaneous because nothing there at the crime scene would make you think that that was planned or that they were ready for that. What do you think? Do you think it was spontaneous and she happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and they were just waiting on someone to come by? And it happened to be her? Do you think it was spontaneous in that something went wrong and it happened to her? Or do you think it was premeditated? They were laying in wait for the first young lady who would come by and they held her at gunpoint.
Okay, so the cap gun, that's what a lot of people said. And actually a lot of the detectives, that was their theory, that this person used this gun. It's the 50s. That thing's made of real metal. There's no orange cap. It looked real. This person used it and lured her out of the car and said, come out, blah, 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 blah. If that's how it was used, then yeah, that would look to be premeditated of some sort. But there's so many other things about the case that feel completely unrelated to that it's hard for me. That's the one piece. It's like for the John Benet Ramsey case for you, the DNA means nothing to you. Nothing. I get so angry at you. I want to like shake you over it. I'm like, what the F is wrong with you? That's everything. There's DNA here. But to you, it means nothing. To me, the cap gun might be that in this case. I just don't feel like it means anything. What if some family was driving down the road a week earlier and the little toddler threw it out the window? What if the guys who did this to her, it was their gun and they did use it, but it wasn't premeditated. They have a car seat in the back. Do they have car seat in the 50s? No, they didn't have car seats, but they have a toddler from the back. They have boosters set up. I don't know. But no, I know. Yeah, we're showing our age here, guys. We'll have to Google that. I'm not even editing that out either. We're going to show that stuff. Listen, so the toddler throws it out and it's just laying in the scene where her car was found. Okay, so the cap, or like I said, the guy who, the people who did it, it was in their car. They said they found it and said, hey, the guy in the back seat says, hey, hand this to, this guy and let's go do this. So I don't know. Even the gun itself doesn't necessarily mean that, wow, we're actually looking at pictures of 1950s vintage car seats. So they did have car seats. That looks like a bear trap. That looks like a bear trap. That's a terrible thing.
You know what?
That is a bear trap. I swear to God.
That's from 1933.
I've caught squirrel in that before.
Hey, okay, so this was typical for the 40s or 50s. It's just like a little pouch that like sits over the back of the seat.
That's a canvas laundry bag.
With holes and a frame for safety.
That is a Halloween costume in a Charlie Brown skit.
But they did care about the safety. But I do agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, the cap, so the gun is laying back there.
If he was old enough to have a cap gun, he was not in a car seat anyway.
I know, but I don't know why you even looked that up, but it's a good point. It was cool because now I see what they look like. I'm excited. All right, so, but the point is, they find the gun in the back seat. He's like, hey, use this. She'll never know it's not real. It's dark. I can see that. It just doesn't lead to premeditation. And honestly, everything I've read about it, I don't. The detective who did this for so long and looked into so much of this in the 2000s, up until now, he always thought they used it to get her out of the car. but I don't even know necessarily that it's important. I hate it. I don't care about the gun. I don't care. The gun makes me want to say it's premeditated, but I don't think it was premeditated. I don't think it was premeditated. I think it was totally spontaneous with maybe some levels of premeditation. Like,
okay, so let's look at it like this then. So let's say it's spontaneous, but maybe more personal. So if we're looking at still spontaneous, but maybe more personal, of course we have to look at significant other. That's statistically, just like we've said before, that's how you have to look at it. It's always the husband or the ex-husband or the boyfriend or the jealous third wheel. That's always the angle that you have to take because it makes the most sense. You always start with the easiest path. You go with what's most direct. And honestly, in this one, I'm not going to say I couldn't be convinced that it was the ex because it seems real sus to me that she went looking for him, basically.
Okay,
that
hold
evening.
on. I hate that. Okay, cool. So you're bringing up X again. We did talk about the X in the last case too. And we're going to get into alibis because that's good stuff. All right. So Douglas Hyatt is Bonnie's ex's name. And when I say X, it's really not even a great word because it was like hours fresh. Her Friday was not good.
X is X.
X is X. I know. I'm saying, no, that's what makes it so fresh. So when I have always looked in this case, if you read the newspapers, they always say that Doug was cleared. And so I really began writing the episode for this with the impression that Doug was not a suspect. There were a lot of people back then who thought he did it, but of course he did. They did. He's the ex.
Of course, that's what you think.
That's where
Always.
we're going with this.
That's always
a lot of people think Jimmy Manning killed Deborah Manning. He's the ex. You know what I'm saying? That's what people look at. Okay. Well, Doug Hyatt had alibis. They said that there were three different individuals who gave him alibis. That's a lot of strength. I never questioned it. If you have three people who alibi you, that's pretty verifiable. You have three direct. And we actually have, well, I know.
I feel like I have three people that would alibi for me.
Well, that's where we're headed with that, ironically. And not just this case, by the way. Okay, so Doug Hyatt was at a hotel room the night of Bonnie's murder, and his alibi were these two guys and a girl. Okay, now I cannot 100% confirm this. I am not going to make the claim that I've seen the police file for this part, but this comes from someone who I do believe has very close knowledge with this case. There was a hotel of some sort party that Doug Hyatt and these two guys were at, and at least one female. I think I'm being told there was two or at least one female there. The next day, they're interviewed and by an officer who comes to the hotel and talks to them, interviews them, and gets the alibi. They're like, okay, yeah, Doug was at this hotel tonight. We partied. He just got back from Korea. He broke up with Bonnie. He's a single dude. He's at a hotel with some dudes and some girls. They're partying. It's the 50s. Nothing illegal about that. It's a pretty good alibi. He's rock solid. Okay.
It's believable. It's at minimum believable.
Yeah, but there's a reason that all these years people have just assumed he's innocent and not a suspect because of the fact that he has this alibi. Well, alibis can seem flimsy or they can seem really strong, but it doesn't mean they're either. Alibis cannot exist, and people can think they exist. You can be told, hey, we heard somebody had an alibi, and find out later, wow, they didn't actually have an alibi.
That's so true.
Now,
I feel like until you see a police report that clears someone.
Oh, yeah. You have no idea. Yeah, you can be told somebody had an alibi, but right. So with Doug, he has an alibi. Now, that didn't change. He does have an alibi. But here's something interesting. And I'm going to tie two stories together here. So we talked about in Scott City, they arrested this random dude. Okay, they pick this guy up. They arrest him. The Highway Patrol's like, okay, first and foremost, the guy's nuts. He's goofy as all whatever. He's not mentally fit to even give a statement. Second off, you're not even in the county where she lived, was murdered, kidnapped from, nothing.
Like, right. So what was the cause for him being picked up? What was the probable cause? Where did that come from?
Oh, okay, interesting. That came, and I never knew this until recently. And once again, not something I can 100% confirm, but I'm being told that particular individual, they got his name from a man by the last name of Poinsett. if you remember from the story and in the papers, he's the guy who witnessed, he passed Bonnie on his way home. He's sitting in his yard. He sees Bonnie drive by. A car drives by fast later, honking his horn, yada, 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 yada.
And there is everything wrong with that.
Well, no, listen.
Everything wrong
Okay,
with
I'm
that.
just saying. He's saying he's in his front yard chilling. I don't know what they're doing in there.
At midnight?
I don't know what they're doing out there. It's midnight, 1 a.m. They're sitting on the rocking chairs. They're Ma and Paul. I'm just saying.
He and his wife, according to the story. It's he and his wife.
I said in the paper. Okay, listen. So I'm just saying, they're sitting in their yard. He is the guy who ends up telling the cops to go look at this guy in Scott County. Okay, so the cops go pick this guy up. He's the one who told them. That's who I saw in the car. I saw that guy following Bonnie. The cops go pick this guy up. He confesses. Okay.
False confession.
But well, guess what? Poinsett, his son-in-law, happens to be one of Doug Hyatt's alibis at the hotel room that night. So Doug Hyatt is at a hotel room with Poinsett's son-in-law partying. Poinsett, by the way, if he's telling the truth, happens to be the last person to see Bonnie Huffman alive other than the murderer. If he's not, that straight up. So Poinsett, in this tiny town of like 64 people for every 10 square miles, it says there's 64 people in a 100-mile area. Somehow the alibi for a murder suspect happens to be the son-in-law of the guy who tells the cops to go pick up this guy. It's nuts. And when I found this out, like I said, I can't confirm 100% any of this yet. We are working on that right now, but I trust it. I honestly think if I were to go talk to people really close to the case, the police, they'd be like, man, how'd you know that? Like, that's how much I trust this. I don't know it to be fact. I have the officer's name. A lot of it I'm not going to say on the show because it's not my information to give out. For the family, I'm not going to do it and other things, but for the investigation too. But there is a lot of stuff that...
Here's my thing about Poinsett. If he did see someone driving, he sees Bonnie driving down the road. She's a single lady. She's going like 30 miles an hour in her car. It's so slow. He can clearly see her driving by. And per the story that we've read, he says that he sees someone then coming up quickly behind her, like laying on the horn, the lights are flashing. Like, clearly this is not a normal scenario, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're sitting on the front porch at midnight with your wife just hanging out and you see a single lady drive by, it's also dark. How did you interpret
face? But no, sorry to cut you off, but just something I thought. It's the 50s. They don't have air conditioning. It's July. Maybe it was hot. Maybe they were just sitting on the porch because it was hot. It's midnight. He just got home. They're just sitting on the porch because it's really
with the mosquitoes.
Hey.
No.
Hey.
I would never.
You wouldn't. Well.
I get it.
I get it. Listen, you're no.
It's unbelievable to me.
To you, it is. I get it. To you, I understand that you can't sit on the porch and watch Desperate Housewives and do what you. Do you ever watch that? You would never.
No,
watch that show.
I would never watch Desperate Housewives. I'm offended. To be honest,
you have a nose ring. You're bougie. Is all I'm saying. You're bougie. You're sort of bougie, and I don't see you as a type who would be sitting on a porch in 2021 at midnight, even in some scenarios.
Now I'm gonna have to do it to make that false. But here's what I'm saying. If Poinsett was sitting on the porch with his wife at midnight and he sees her drive by and then sees someone coming up behind her so quickly, that's concerning. The lights are being flashed, flashing headlights, laying on the horn. Why didn't he jump back in his car and follow, see what was going on?
Well, yeah, that same car, he said, came back 10 minutes later and flew by again in the opposite direction.
Right.
And then it didn't click. So, but when you
didn't think to go see what.
And when you read the article, when you read the newspaper article, it makes it sound like in the stories from then, it makes it sound like he didn't know who was in the car. He saw a vehicle. It's even worse if he did know, which he's the one who supposedly now told the cops to go.
You clearly saw this man from Scott County at midnight through the window of a fast-moving car.
In the 50s, and you didn't go help? You didn't try to do nothing? That would be odd to me. I would automatically want to do something. Yeah, no, so I do get that.
Or I would call the cops. If I see somebody pass down my street like that, and I'm like, whoa, maybe they need help. If I'm not equipped to help, I'm going to call the cops.
That whole thing's sketchy to me. Yeah, the whole story, that whole part of the story is sketchy to me. But, once again, no way to verify any of that. Literally what we're talking about right now, this is stuff I've learned because of Facebook posts, us advertising. We want people to reach out to us with evidence, with witness statements, with rumors. If your uncle told you he read in a file, doesn't mean that we're going to take it as fact, but we are going to look into it. This stuff that I'm talking about right now is stuff that we were given firsthand through people very close to the family. And we're being told, hey, Doug was at this hotel And his alibi, one of them is the son-in-law of the guy who said this. So also, both of these individuals.
That could be nothing, though.
No, it could. No, coincidence do happen. We talk about that. Some days you win the lottery, some days you get hit by a train. We get it. But there's more to it with that too. Doug leaves on the 19th of July to go back to the military. He's home temporarily. He breaks up with Bonnie. He leaves the July 19th, and I don't know the exact time, but he left Missouri for a long time, for a while. Him and his actual wife married late in life and had kids late in life, and from what I can tell, very little relationship with the daughter at all. They will refuse to talk about their dad or anything. They completely disconnect from that. But I'm actually being told that he went down south to Oklahoma and was married down there and had another kid down there that, once again, stuff that I'm just learning, we're confirming as we're working on, but those are other pieces. That's really sketchy, man. You're from Missouri, that's your whole life, and this murder happens to your girlfriend that she was under the impression you guys were getting married. You wrote her letters saying you were getting married, bro.
Ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, right. You're right. You're right. You're right.
Broke up with her.
You're right, but I'm saying he wrote her letters. They talked about marriage.
I would leave town too. I would leave town.
There is that. No, there is that. Even an innocent guy might. I know. You're right. That would be hard to deal with. You're right. And maybe he just moved where one of his army buddies were or something. I can't confirm any of that yet. I don't know. I don't like it. I think it's sketch.
And think about having to live in the community where everyone now assumes that you did it. Like, I wouldn't want to hang out. If everybody thinks that I killed my significant other or ex-significant other, I would not want to live there. It'd be over. It's too small of an area. Every time you go to the grocery store, somebody's going to be like, murderer. No thanks. Not for me. I would leave. I would move.
Yeah. And I don't know what the environment for sure was. I don't know how soon people got the impression that they thought it was him and how quick all that spread. There were a lot of rumors back then. We've covered several of the big theories here. Oh my goodness, guys. Over the last 70 whatever years, there's been so many rumors and theories about this case. She was held, her half-brother Bobby Thiele was involved, and she was held in a cabin. Percy Little and the cops actually went and searched that and then find out that tip came from a fortune teller or something. There's been so many theories on who might have done it, what done it. There was a magazine that came out in the 60s, a true crime magazine that did a story about it that kind of got it bumped back up again. Every 5-10 years, there's an anniversary thing. It pops back up every so many times. But all of these theories, all these witnesses, all these things that could have taken place, man, there's just nothing to prove. There's no way to prove it. You asked me earlier, do I think it's premeditated? I can tell you what I think all day long. If you ask me right now, who do I think did it? I have an answer in my head. But there's nothing that I can give you to prove it to you. And if it's not the same person that you think or the same theory that you think, I'm not going to be able to convince you because I don't have any solid foundation for that. I have a gut feeling. I've got a few little small poker chips we're not going to talk about today, but you know what I mean? That's it. I have nothing. There's nothing for me to definitively say, hey, boom. And I don't think anybody can give me that either. By all means, change my mind, please. If you're listening to this and you think, hey, I have something, please, we'll say it again. Call in. Send us a text, send us a whatever, send us a chat, anything. We don't care. Reach out to Cape Sheriff's Department, please, with any information. I just don't feel in this case there's anything anybody's going to give me that's going to help the case. It's just going to be more stories. Now, I would love to tell them. I would love to put them all together, and maybe if we get enough of them together, we can put a pretty good theory together. But at the end of the day, that's all it's going to be is another theory. Doug could have done it. His alibi is maybe not as strong as what it looked like it used to be. The Chaffee Scott City guy, now that we know where the source for his name even came from, because you always look at who was originally looked at, just because they let him go, it might have been that. It's pretty unlikely looking that it might have been that guy, really. I mean, from what I'm hearing, he wasn't like the smartest guy in the world, so maybe it was a Ponzi. I don't know. But
it also could have been just beef. He's got a problem with that guy.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. So he's going to try to throw him under the bus.
Yeah. Strangers Theory, VFW magazine guy. I love it. I want to buy into it. I want to close it. I want to be like, it was Matthew. It was him.
What's funny?
It was him and his nephew.
This is what is crazy about this right now. To you, the gun means nothing. The toy gun means zero. To me, the magazine could be completely explained away, but you are
done. No,
you
I
are
can't
hung
take
on the magazine.
I cannot take
You're
you.
hung on it because it's huge. Because it says his name. It's not.
It's huge.
I don't think
it's so
is.
Big. No, it's huge. It's like it would be like if you went and had a new pair of shoes made today. Like, what do you do? You wear Uggs? What do you like? Wear Uggs?
Wow.
Okay. What?
You don't even know me at all.
I'm just saying, what do you wear? Okay, sorry. Gucci, is that a thing? Do they make shoes? Okay, as you can tell, I'm not a fashion person. Okay, I'm just saying, you go have a new pair of custom LeBrons made for yourself. There you go. That's hip. That's modern. You get a custom pair of LeBrons going. You get your name embroidered in that shoe, right? And you go and 2 days later, after you get these shoes...
I'm about to absolutely wreck this argument.
No, you're not.
Because
2 days
if
later,
you find a pair of LeBrons anywhere, even if they have somebody else's name on them, you're taking those home with you.
I'm saying, that's my point. Yeah, man. No, it's huge, man. The VFW, what is it doing there? If the guy would have said, we passed through that area, who knows, man? It might have fell out the window.
It's literally paper.
With a very specific person's name on it and address. It's a chain of custody thing. How does it possibly get from there to there and they happen to be in this area? It's so unrealistic.
Why would you leave a map to yourself if you committed a crime? Don't leave a map to yourself at the crime scene.
You wouldn't purposely, because it's one of those things that falls out of the floorboard as you...
No way.
Yes.
No.
What's that case way back in the day where the two brothers, they were found because one of them dropped their eyeglasses, and it was a specific set of eyeglasses that had a very specific type of lens that only like one in so many people. It was in the 20s, the two rich kids. Anyway, it's one of those. Sometimes those little unique things get dropped on accident. It's huge, man. I don't even want to look at you right now. I need a divider in our room.
You would not hear a magazine fall out of your car.
Not in the heat of the moment when I'm
in the middle of the night.
A 5'10" kicking, screaming woman. I'm trying to abduct her and hurt her. I'm not focused on a magazine.
But they didn't leave the body right there, so they would have looked around. Like, there's no way.
What about the cop gun? What about the gun?
They
wouldn't have taken that with them because they don't want to leave evidence. They don't want to leave.
Maybe I can buy your story that the gun was not important. Because if it wasn't their gun, of course they would have left it there. It's just trash on the side of the road. Oh, so
you're throwing in my face that if the gun's not important, then the magazine's not important.
I'm just saying it's possible that the magazine is not, but you're like, it definitely could be him. Or it could definitely not.
Yeah, cool. That was fun. No, it might not be. Honestly, I could buy that it wasn't magazine guy. I just like it. I put a lot into that. Also, deathbed confession. Bro, I put a lot of that. I'm sorry. I buy deathbed confessions.
I don't.
Oh my, like on your deathbed? Like what? Like nobody lies on their deathbed. But, yeah, and then kid from St. Louis who overheard his dad say the thing.
That is the least believable to me.
You think so? The cops really liked that one, man. They looked into that one hard.
I know, but what criminal brings their child along before they murder someone?
Indeed.
That seems like a terrible plan.
But I've heard of it happening.
It's not impossible, but also, who snitches on their dad?
Who snitches on their dad? That's a good one. But look, he was a kid, and as he gets older, he wants to solve a case. He's older. He's an adult now, and he's like, man, oh my God, I heard all these bad things about my dad. I remember one time when I was a kid, this happened, and I'm not saying it's 100% my favorite theory, but I find it very believable. I believe that he thought he was telling the truth. I do believe guy came forward, very legit, was not making it up. I do believe some of the stuff I read, the police investigated enough and looked enough hard into it that they do believe he was telling the truth. It was one of those leads that actually just petered out at the end because they just couldn't prove it. There was nothing there of substance of proof. I mean, that's cool that you have this story and we love it. We want to buy it. We'd love to close it. But you telling us alone that you overheard your daddy say this, that means nothing. It's so I love it, but I can't.
It seems too specific to me too. He's like, I remember I saw my dad walking in a field and then he said, we should have done this and put her farther into the culvert. Really? Like, that's exactly how you remembered it?
Well, maybe.
However many years later?
He's had a lot of time to think about it. I don't know.
He passed a polygraph too. Think about it. Okay. And that's something that is weird. Like, this can be completely unrelated, but truth is so subjective. Your truth and my truth will never be the same. And truth is different than fact.
I can be telling you the truth, but lying to you.
Truth can be different than fact.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. I don't think people think about that because the fact is it is 98 degrees outside.
Truth is objective.
But I can say, Justin, it's super hot outside.
Yeah.
That's truth.
Someone can murder someone and then look you in the face and you can ask them, did you kill this person? And they can say no. And they can be telling you the truth. The truth. Is it your truth?
Fact.
Is it fact? No. But is it the truth? It is if they believe it. If they've mentally convinced themselves that they did not do this, they are telling you the truth. They're not lying to you. They're mentally being very truthful. They're saying, I didn't do this. I think some people are so good at tricking themselves they can do that, but I legit think some people suppress it so deep mentally, deep down so far, the trauma, most of these people are in abuse childhoods, not all, but it's very So I think sometimes they can trap so much of that mental abuse down that they're being very truthful. So it's like that kid very well may have been telling the truth.
That's true.
But was it an accurate story? Who the heck knows, man? Because it's very specific. Because that's way too specific.
His truth.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like he was telling some truth, but does it make it? Can you? None of it's provable. Cool, man. You guys lived in that area back then, and I just like VFW magazine guy, just like Doug. I like Doug for it too. I like the old times theories. The old timers back then that like Doug Ford. He's the X-Man.
Yeah, but I mean,
his family's gonna get all mad, and I hate that. But
he's about to leave town. Like, he knows that he's just home to visit. I feel like he's kind of a gentleman in some aspects because he came home.
He just broke up with her.
But think about this. He could have strung her along for that whole time before he left back out of town. And he didn't. To me, I have a smidge of respect for you. You were direct. You broke up with her. Doesn't mean he's a nice guy. Doesn't mean he did the right thing. But to me, if you don't want to be with somebody, break up with them. Let it go. If that's what he did, props.
I don't even know what to say to you. You're an evil. No, bro. This guy is not a gentleman. He might have been. I don't know. I wasn't there. But I get the ickies from it when I read about this guy. I just do. I've read things about him and I've heard a lot about him. I get the ickies from him. So while we weren't there, and he honestly, it could have been an integrity move. At a boy, way to be honest. We just don't know for sure. Maybe it was. All I know is it always says that they broke up that day. I don't know, man. Maybe it was something right there that happened that day where he was just being a gentleman or whatever. I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe there's completely innocent intentions. He was just breaking up with her. Like, look, I was in the military. I was in Korea. I had to have somebody to write to. You were nice to write to and all, but I get home and this isn't what I want. I don't want to get married. Sorry, I strung you along, but I'm breaking up with you. It's time to leave.
I mean, that could be. That really could be.
Or when she left to drive to go look at the tavern,
and then murder them.
Because it wasn't premeditated. That's where I was going. So she leaves to go look for him, drives by the tavern, sees his car. He is with these two guys and those girls. The two guys are both married. Bonnie sees them with girls. They freak out and they're like, oh crap, they're going to tell our wives. She's going to tell our wives. And so it's a situation where Doug didn't plan on killing her maybe. But now that's what ends up happening somehow.
But now that's like 4 or 5 people that know. And 4 and 5 people are going to keep this secret for their whole entire lives.
Well, yeah, no, but I mean, that does play into that. It's one of those things that you see it. It sounds iffy and washy, but you see it. Okay. Other parts of that. Maybe there is only 1 or 2 people who know for sure. The girls may not have actually seen the murder itself. It may have happened on the way back to the hotel. Who knows? They're just being told what to say. Hey, say this. Da 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 da. We just don't know, man. We can't interview them. All the people involved here passed. Pretty much everyone has passed. Doug's passed. Everybody's passed. But the alibi, them saying that they were at the hotel, it doesn't mean that.
And why would Doug have taken the watch? What benefit would that be? Especially if her parents gave her the watch. Why would he need to take it?
Once again, you know what? Okay, once again, though, it boils down to, was the watch taken even? They didn't metal detectors. This is worse than Deborah's case. This is 1954. What if it's just shoddy police work? Or what if they just didn't find it? What if it was thrown over with some of the other stuff and they happened to find everything else?
This was a nice
But
watch.
her watches, it was very small, though. It was nice. It was nice for the time. I think it cost well over $100 for the time or something crazy. It was a nice watch. But
so you would expect quality.
Yeah.
So this is not a Velcro watch that just flew somewhere off of her arm.
Right.
This is a well-fitted, nice watch.
Yeah.
I would think that means it has to be purposefully taken.
No.
Yes.
Bro, it could be laying in the weeds. Bro, they couldn't even, it took them 59 hours to find her body and it was laying 3 foot from the road.
But who would have stopped him and like, you know what? I'll take her watch off and throw it out into the grass.
It didn't happen that way. They're grabbing her. It comes off her wrist. They grab it, throw it behind them. In this tussle, it falls. Literally, they were standing 3 feet from the body, and not only did they not see it, they didn't smell it. It's very conceivable to me, but that watch was laying in the ditch. You're pushing me today.
I'm just saying, it really, I don't see that the watch is not purposeful. I feel like it would have had to have been taken. Like, I can understand, like, I don't know, like, as a girl, you wear a ponytail holder on your wrist a lot. that ponytail holder is not just gonna come off of your wrist. A ponytail holder.
No,
so a nice watch that's fitted to you.
She was wearing her class ring. If they were going to take something as a trophy, it would have been her class ring. It had her initials on it.
Well, to
not
me,
the watch.
if you're thinking about something coming off in a tussle, the ring is more likely to come off of her hand than a watch to come all the way off of a wrist.
Oh, want to hear something? But check this out. Once again, not completely confirmed, but 1975, the evidence was destroyed. 2 years prior, Bonnie's mom goes to the highway patrol and requests Bonnie's high school ring, which was in her evidence. She'd already seen it several times after the murder when they went to be questioned about, can you confirm this is hers, yada, yada, yada. 2 years before the evidence destroyed, someone had taken the ring out of the evidence and it was missing. The family never got her ring back. Somebody took it out of evidence, or it was misplaced, quotation mark, or it was, I don't know the right word to put there, but all I know is when the mother went to go get it in 1972 or 3, several years prior to the evidence even being destroyed, she was told that it was taken.
Well, you could have taken it out of town and pawned it, right?
Who?
Anyone who had access to evidence could have taken the ring, been like, I need some money. No, I'm talking about the class ring.
Oh yeah. Sorry, the class ring. Yeah, they could have. Yeah, it's theoretically possible. Yeah, but it's like, of all the other things in evidence, a class ring. There's all kinds of other things you're going to take out of evidence from other people's cases: drugs, gold, all kinds of, who knows. A class, and it's Delta. It's a little bit, you know what I mean? I get what you're saying.
How much evidence do they have in their locker?
The highway patrol.
What's to say? They didn't do that to a lot of other boxes. Like, you've got a.
That's what I'm saying. They probably did. It wouldn't. So that's what I'm saying. In my opinion, I have a little bit of a hard time believing that part is specific to Bonnie's case.
It's
that
unfortunate.
Somebody took specifically Bonnie's ring. It sounds almost like somebody just took a ring. It could have been all the boxes there. Who knows? But the reason I bring it up is because at the time there was a huge theory that somehow law enforcement was involved in this. But that just goes to show you how crazy it got. With rumors, people were throwing all kinds of crazy stuff out there. And so it's really hard with this one to know how to put, I always like to have a main theory in a case. I like to be able to pick one and say, I think this is it. I have that, but it's harder with this one because I don't.
Yeah, I don't have that for this one. I'm not truly convinced that any of these paths is right.
It could be a complete stranger that we haven't talked about. It could be a complete local who just sat in our face the whole time. The Delphi murders, Libby, they always talk about how some people think it's a local who's right out in the open hiding. It could have very well been that with Bonnie. The people who found her body, Earl Akins was his name. We hadn't got into them yet. The people who found the body, Earl Akins was his name. He found it with his wife. They passed by. They're halfway home. They said, "Did you spell it back there? Let's turn around and go check it again." They come back, which is sketch, and they happen to find this body. I've heard it theorized that Earl actually is the boy from St. Louis who said, "I heard my dad with a friend say we should have pushed her body down." I've heard it that Earl was that guy and that he's the local and he's the one. And so, I found no link between Earl Akins and this guy, this guy's dad, but they were from the same geographical area if they were from Allenville. So it's not unprecedented they might know each other. But Earl Akins found her body and people swore it had not been there. People swore. That was another theory that was huge at the time. And there were two big factions back then. A lot of people believed that Earl Akins had something to do with this. The law enforcement were involved theory. And then a lot of people believe that Doug had a lot to do with this. Those were the two. And there was billions of theories that went every direction. It was nuts. But those were two big factions that really thought, hey, this is what's up. And so, even today, maybe those are the two most likely. Maybe, you know what I mean? We didn't get much into Earl, and I'm not going to cover that a whole lot. Honestly, half the stuff I found out about him is really not great stuff at all. It's not going to do me any justice to tell a lot of this yet, not knowing that it's necessary. He does have family still alive. You guys know what he was. You know what he did. He's not the greatest dude. There's no reason to get into too much of it, but it was very sketch how he found the body, man. It was very sketch the situation. It was very sketch his life, how he lived his life and the way he looked, the way he did things. It's very sketch, man. And so I do get, now that I've looked into it, why a lot of people back then would have thought, and we talked about that with Deborah's case, the whatever the guy's name was, McCall, first person to find a body. Sometimes people return to the scene of the crime. If he was involved in her death, for some reason, criminals think that by finding the body, it distances them from the crime. It doesn't work that way. You actually look really sus now if you found the body. unless you actually have an alibi.
You know which ones I always like feel most believable? If you find a body at your job, you're the janitor.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
You're the guy that mows the lawn. You're the guy that goes and checks the fence. Things like that. I believe you if you're at work. If you're on the clock, I'm more likely to believe you. Not 100%, but if you
Yeah.
say, I was at work and I, was moving things from one site to the other and I found a body, I was so shook up. That was so scary. I believe you if you're at work.
Yeah.
But if it's like in passing, I'm why were you there? I guess,
What are you doing there,
even
man?
if you're
What are
in
you
the
doing?
most common
What are you
area,
doing?
you could be in the public park and I'd be like, why were you there? Why were you there?
Yeah,
At a
I
crime
get it.
scene. It just, I don't know. That's my personal bias. I always just assume if you're at work, you should be there. If you're not at work, you shouldn't be there. Regardless of where it is, you shouldn't have been there.
No,
you shouldn't have been there.
Yeah. No, it's crazy, man. Like I said, this is one of those. Obviously, if you guys who are listening to this have any information in the Bonnie Huffman murder, please call forward. It's been all these years. It's been since 1954, but that doesn't mean that information is useless. It doesn't mean that we can't take this case further. But the main goal here is to get Bonnie's story out there. People need to hear about the teacher from Delta who lost her life, and we may never know exactly who did it. But people need to hear her story and know that she did exist. This is quite possibly the oldest cold case on the books in the state of Missouri for murder. I can't verify that 100%, but I have not found one that's still in the books in any city older than this. Not a single one. And that's important. If it's going to be that, we need to make sure people know about it and people hear her story. But yeah, you guys take and think about this. Think about the theories. Think about this. We've gone over 30. I mean, and there's 30 more. If you guys dig a little in the newspapers, maybe eventually we'll get our Patreon up and get a lot of this extra content that we have put into a place where you guys can get more access to it. But there's still a lot of digging to do with this case. Just because it's unsolved after all these years and a lot of people think that it can't be solved, doesn't mean that some stroke of luck couldn't solve it. I'm sitting here talking about, oh, they couldn't do it without DNA. They couldn't do this. They couldn't do this. Hey, you know what? One little thing can flip that switch hard.
Someone could have the watch right now in their possession.
They found it in an uncle's stuff after he passed. Yeah.
Something.
Literally, you never know. A guy finds a watch in a pawn shop and says, hey, I heard about that case on the Crime Talk Radio podcast. They were talking about a watch. That literally looked like, guys, I'm pretty sure I can post a picture of the watch and what it looked like. I can show you an exact replica of it. I will try to get that up on the website just for informational purposes. But yeah, maybe you see it. Maybe somebody sees it in a pawn shop. It's like, oh my gosh, that looks like the one I saw on the Crime Talk Radio podcast thing. It could happen. It literally, there's always hope in this case. The bad guys, we will never stop hunting you. Just even if you die, even if it's 100 years later, there's a case I'm working on right now from 1856. I'm not kidding. It'll be fun. It's a Missouri history case. It's not an official case. Who knows if it even happened? I'm not sure. It'll be a fun episode to do, a spoof thing of. But guess what? We're going to talk about you. I swear to you, if you hurt somebody, if you hurt someone, we're going to tell their story and tell about your involvement. And if it's you, we'll find out. And you know what? All these people that we talked about in this episode, some of the names we use, some of the names we didn't, yada, yada, yada. But if we find more stuff, we'll use names. I'm okay using names. I said Earl Akins. I said it for a reason. Notice he was the only name I said out of that group. But I said his name for a reason. If I think I have a reason to say your name, I'm going to say your name. I don't care about your legacy. I don't care about how your family feels about you. If I feel like you have something about you that you're connected to this, and I have something with him, I do feel like he's enough that I feel his name should be used as a suspect. Yes. Does that mean he's the main suspect? Absolutely not. People get that confused. To be considered a suspect in a case or a person of interest, that's actually better. Let me reword that. I would look at Earl as a person of interest. Absolutely. 100%. There's 100 things about that case that we didn't talk about here that make Earl a person of interest in this case. But does it mean he did anything? No. But if I think you did something, I don't care if you're dead. I'll say your name. You don't get to die and then think, oh, it's over. My family doesn't have to deal with my problems. Hey, sucks to be you, bro. I will ruin your legacy. I will tarnish your name. You will not. You don't get away with it just because you died. Deborah's case.
Yeah.
I have
justice
the two main
expire.
Justice does not expire. The two main theories that I have in Deborah's case, one of them, the person's still alive. One of them, the person's dead. Maybe those both theories are the same and they tie in. Maybe they're the same. But what I'm getting at is, even if it's the theory that they're dead, Once I prove it, I will ruin their name. I will make sure everyone knows. This case is a little different. It'll be hard, but if we found out something, like I said his name. That's fine. We'll say names when we need to. We'll ruin legacies, but we will never stop talking about it just because it's been a long time. We'll talk about these cases. Our next case was pretty old too. We're going to do a couple of these cases that are a little bit older, and then we'll come a little more modern with it. We'll have one coming up that's really modern, actually. That one's a little tougher because it is so recent. But yeah, I think that's where we're at with this case, especially. We're at a standstill. We definitely can't pick a main suspect.
No.
So I don't think we have any ability to close this case at all. Yeah, this is an old case. I didn't take this case thinking we were going to try to get a hold of stuff. We did find some new information. We'll put some of it in the Patreon and things like that. This is a really great story about a really great young woman who didn't have the option to live life to her fullest. It was taken from her. We may never know the reason why, but we won't stop telling her story, man. That's the biggest part. So, final thoughts? Anything you want to say? No final thoughts? Nothing. You jabbered that whole time. You cut me off. You interrupted me. You insulted me, like low key.
Wow.
They can't see it,
Wow.
but she flipped me the bird once in this whole thing. It was nuts. Nothing. Okay. That's it.
Oh, did I show you what was in my pocket?
A bird joke. Again, you can't see it, but there's a bird involved. Yeah, there it is. It's a bird. Okay. This is Crime Talk Radio, guys. Our second episode. It's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening. The fact that you give us a listen, the fact that you give us a download, the fact that you share Deborah's story, now Bonnie's story. Share. I don't ever want to be that guy who like asks you for things. You know, please buy our Patreon. Please give us money. But I don't ever want to ask you to give us money, but please give us money. You know, don't buy our Patreon, but please go buy our Patreon. I don't want to ask you for those things, but give us a share. It's not about us. Give Deborah's story a share. Give Bonnie's story a share. Help us get their stories out there. And every time we get a new download and it lets us know on our phone, I get thankful. I'm like, one more person that heard about Bonnie. One more person that heard about Deborah. So, keep listening, guys. Keep talking. You guys are Crime Talkers. We are Crime Talk Radio. We will never stop talking until all of their stories are told.
We will continue to keep you informed as this story unfolds.
This has been an Audio Tiger production.